I'm Shane Hyde. I live at Kaio in Northland. We've lived on this property since 2001, and we've brought the property with the intention of doing permaculture on it and providing something for our children and their children to do livestock and trees and diversify the land so that it could earn income long term. We ventured out into doing sustainable land management design, in which I'd been trained in. As we went forward, we started doing bigger development, bigger project work, and since 2000 we planted nearly 1 million native trees. In 2005 we were planting 40,000 native trees out at Mātika, which is the Kerikeri Peninsula, and in the springtime it was important to weed release those trees from the kaikuyu grass. And Northland kaikuyu grass grows up to 7 metres in a year, so effectively what it does is it grows up and over the top of your native plants. So one of the chemicals that we were using at the time to do the weed release was called Galand, and it had a high component of organic solvents in it. And I had an accident. I fell over in deep kaikuya and ended up with chemical all over me, and ultimately going forward I got over it. I thought I had. I actually went home, had a wash, had some eggs, which was interesting for me, and felt better. But 3 weeks later all my hair started coming out in clumps, and I approached the doctor again, and the doctor said I had alopecia. The fatal thing for me at that point in time is the doctor never took any medical evidence, no proof, and as a result now today ACC still don't respect that our physical injury occurred and that it was related to herbicide poisoning. The secret to that one is, if you get chemical poison or you suspect it, ask for the evidence to be collected at the first point. Sort of cut the corners a little bit. I went done it, and I had a smart genes test done on a suggestion. It cost me $640, which was well worth it. It identified that I had a DNA characteristic that meant that I was slow at metabolizing glycol. And as a result, what was a harmful product noted by EPA as a harmful product was actually quite harmful for me, because it took me 9 times longer to process that chemical than what a normal person would. So I ended up with a chemical burden, and that still hasn't been acknowledged by the medical professions at this stage. They've got no knowledge of that. Going forward, where does that leave us? We went as a family of 4. I have 2 daughters, a very nice wife that stood behind me the whole time. We went through 3 years to 4 years living on less than $7,500 as a family. And our business that had 24 employees at the height of it, seasonal employees planting, went right back down to not even myself. We managed to survive by selling capital, our cattle, everything, just to survive that period of time. When my health returned enough, I still had rolling fatigue, which meant that I couldn't commit to a full 8 hours across a 40-hour week anywhere, so getting employment was quite difficult. I was lucky enough to be able to fall back on pest control work, and the local doc enabled me to do a pest control contract for them in 2009. At that point in time, I worked over 2,000 hectares as a single person with the occasional help of a few people. We did fur recovery from that block, which funded ourselves to work it. After approximately 4.5 months, we had a monitor, or I had a monitor done on that block, and the initial monitor failed the requirements what doc were asking at that time, and we went back in again, and we ended up with a worse result 14 days later, or a little bit more than 14 days later, regardless putting another 5,000 to 10,000 ferrotox pills in there. So ferrotox pills is a cyanide. You put it in a little bait bag and you put it out there. So that really started me on the journey of trying to understand how could a pest control person maintain a larger landscape and be successful with a monitor. And one of the elements to that one was I realised that ground-based operators are in competition with aerial delivery of 1080 at this point in time in the forest, and that it was quite important for sustainable land management to enable the ground operator to continue this work where they can walk, because the observations that are made on the ground are quite important, and you can really make a difference over a longer period of time. So coming back to that one, going forward again, we ended up with automation. It was the first thing in New Zealand that was automated in pest control equipment. The concept was that one person could put something out in the forest and it would keep delivering all the way through the monitor, as well as without the person needing to be there, because that was a requirement of dockers, that the contractor needed to be absent from the block. So we were quite successful, and we journeyed forward. My health improved a lot more by the continual participation in the forest. It was mentally, it was quite nice to be out there, and yeah, so we ended up with a product called Enviromate 100. It's a patented product, and it's dealing with acute delivery of toxins in a very controlled and contained way, targeting possums and rats, and it enables one operator to do around 600 hectares of forest permanently, continuously, which had never been possible before. So we still try to get this product to the market. There appears to be a level of resentment that we ever designed this product. We also are subjected to competing products now, due to that we haven't been funded since 2014 in any way by Department of Conservation or State to bring this forward for safer use in New Zealand forests. So
what percentage of people might have that DNA?
From my studies, it's quite clear that 10% of any given population will have show symptoms of glycol, and of that 10% of people, 6% will have an adverse effect. Okay. So in reality, when you look across the population of New Zealand, when I calculated it, it would say, or would determine, that 90,000 people in New Zealand on any given day would be adversely or mildly affected by glycol use. The problem with glycol is that it takes generally between 7 to 15 years to show up. So it's a gradual thing, unless somebody's actually been swimming in it, like what I accidentally did. So, and more than likely, I had a history of orchard work, chemicals all my life, so probably more than likely I had a gradual build-up that I was just maintaining, and the trip point was the backpack spill.
Do you have any do you have ongoing chemical sensitivity to the glyphosate that's sprayed, or anything else that you come into contact with?
What we've tried to do since that period of time is I tried to remove myself from agricultural chemicals or food products that may contain it as much as possible. I still use cyanide, but that doesn't actually get on my skin or anything. What I did find is, if I was to take the Roundup cap off or something, I get a lot of itchiness on the skin. And if I encounter where some chemicals have been, there is a sensitivity there. It normally starts to get a little bit headachy. But the difficulties that I face is, initially there was a multitude of things going on. I have a little bit of trouble with remembering names and stuff now. Whether you put that down to old age or whether you put that down to chemical exposure, that's the question. I have fatigue on a reasonably regular basis, and I do have to manage that really well. So, and it's rolling, so I don't really know when it's going to come and get me, but it does get me. Yeah, and but financially, it's we're still locked in a financial trap, obviously, because the banks won't lend money. You've got no way to go forward if you're not supported by ACC, and it takes a long time to climb out of a hole. I suppose one of the hardest things for me to come to grips with ACC is it's independent. They appear to have no accountability. They appear to be able to write their own law concept. What a physical injury in ACC might mean is actually different than what the health minister would say a physical injury is. There's no consistency. So in reality, it's a little bit sad for me to see somebody that has a chosen activity, whether it be sports or driving a car with alcohol, to have an accident, break a bone and to be covered, whereas I was participating in a workplace doing what I thought was harmless, and we've not been covered. There's no fairness in that. To have a family suffer for so many years.
Have you had an ongoing correspondence with them over the years?
Since 2006, I was told by two doctors that there was alopecia, that they can't help me. So initially I went away from that. What I did find is that my clarity of speech, my ability to form sentences was collapsing. I got to the point that I could hardly get a sentence out, and a third doctor, who was a family friend, suggested I needed to get help. I ended up with the only help that was offered, and it was from Johnny Harris, based in Whangarei, and he was doing body talk and a little bit off-stream medical help. It was really interesting to go in with him after 2 sessions that I funded. I funded all the sessions myself, requiring a trip to Whangarei and his time. In 2 things, he was able to get my mind focused back on, get my clarity back and pull me out a little bit. He used homeopathy on me. I wasn't a believer at the start, but that was it turned out to be quite beneficial for me. And after about 6 months, we got to the point that I had a little bit of hair growth again even. But at that point in time, we couldn't afford the travel. We couldn't afford to return to Johnny, and we just carried forward from there again. So,
do you have ongoing medical treatment at you?
I have no medical treatment at this point in time, but we do not let ACC. I haven't finished with ACC at this point in time. I forever hope that the truth will come, and it would be acknowledged. Our sticking point is not that I had an accident, it's not that I wasn't involved in chemicals, it's a debate over whether it was a physical injury. So ACC state that hair loss isn't a physical injury, based on occupational health person's recommendation or statement that hair loss isn't a physical injury, but in reality I lost all my hair. I lost eyebrows, nose hair, the whole lot. It's all gone. Means that if I participate in a workplace with dust, which I traditionally did at sawmill, I still got sawmills, anything, I've got no protection, I've got no pre-warning. If I'm working in the forest, I'm always getting whacked with sticks and things because I don't feel them coming first. So to say that hair loss caused by chemicals is a non-physical thing is totally wrong.
It's wrong, yes, it's wrong. Yeah. I hope you'll see this corrected one day.
Yeah. So to focus on hair loss, that's only one of the symptoms. So the bigger picture is what it's done to the rest of the body. The fatigue is caused by something. The itchy skin,
Absolutely,
the whole thing.
Loss of speech, you know.
Yeah, the whole thing, but it's not acknowledged.
Yeah, that would have been really difficult for your family to watch that happen to you.
Yeah, it's still difficult today. The implications of it all carry on today. It doesn't go away. So no, we're here. We're just very lucky that we're debt free at the start, and that we have a lovely community here in Kaio, and that we've had quite a lot of support from people in general, but nothing from the state. So that goes for chemical poisoning, and it also goes for developing a product that gives an opportunity for the state to step away from aerial 1080. So everything's all intertwined. At the end of the day, it's about chemicals in the environment, and we don't really need the level of chemicals that we have in the environment at the moment. There's other ways.
Absolutely, you've proven that here. Yeah, absolutely. And why do you think DOC has not picked up, the Enviromate and done some substantial trials with it?
We're still surprised why DOC won't work with the Enviromate 100. It was presented in 2014 to Alistair Bramley and his science and innovation team on the suggestions of another DOC member. We'd already done substantial work with the automation to understand that it worked. They chose to decline it because possibly they'd over-invested in other technology at the time. Other competing products at that time were Good Nature traps. They had spent $7 million on that already, and to date that's closer to $12 million spent on that of public funds. Mainly, I think, if you actually look between the lines at the moment, what we identify as our biggest hurdle is we are a standalone system for a ground operator to be able to manage large landscapes, and we don't actually need aerial 1080 to enable that. It would be actually a negative step where a person can walk economically to do aerial first and then deploy their environment. You're really just doubling up the work. So hence all the technologies that we see are being supported at this point in time are a follow-up to 1080, not a standalone system. And I think ultimately that's the obstruction or impediment to us getting out there. And we never know. In 2014, Alistair Bramley made comment that regional managers on DOC could use Enviromate. There's been no follow-through to enable that to happen. So we're just not supported for whatever reason. Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit more to why you think it's important to have people on the ground and the benefit of actually going into the forest for those people and the outcomes?
People need ownership. They need ownership to their community, their catchment. And permaculture quite strongly suggests that people should be part of the landscape. So to appreciate what they're living in and how they're living for the betterment of all. So I don't see people removed from the landscape. I feel a part of the landscape. So it's not a financial element. I don't do what I do for financial reward. I do it for the environment so that our children and future generations have something better than what we inherited. So having people on the ground, it gives jobs. It not only gives jobs, it gives understanding and observation to forest health. But we're just part of the landscape, and we're at this point in time, really all we are is the top predator. So we're keeping on top of all those other predators that we have released here in the environment. And that means that those things that were here before us can have a chance to be in balance with themselves. I don't understand that we need to have total predator eradication to find balance, but we do need to find balance.
What would be your vision for how things could evolve, if you could choose, what would be your vision for the future? What would it look like?
Well, permaculture sets down a lot of very good elements, and that's working with what you have and the resources you have in your neighbourhood to the best way without detracting from the environment which you live in. So making healthy soils would be my first outcome. Is if we haven't got healthy soils, we can't grow the food we need to survive. And making sure that we have clean water so that all the animals and everything works well. So water and soil is the base to everything. It's the foundation. And if you don't look after that, well, might as well just be another Mars. I already had been participating in pest control since the age of probably 12 or 13. I was unfortunately from a broken family, and I don't blame my parents, I just blame financial circumstances of the time. And but as a result of that, I spent a lot of time in the forest at an early age, and I would also compliment my family and my larger family for installing a good ecological ethics in me. And I think probably a lot of that is the kaitiaki that's passed down through generations, regardless of your family background. Actually helps make you appreciate the land in which you live. So it's really hard for a person that's in an urban environment to gain appreciation to the land without actually being there. And unless they get the opportunity to participate, whether that be dock walk tracks open for walking, or huts to stay in, or tour guides, or what it is, training, if that's not available, you can't expect people to appreciate what you're trying to do.
Could you tell us a little bit about your study?
Yeah, my study was basically a capping of where I already was going. I was lucky enough to have role models in Mangarapiri, Zelka, Graham and Tim, and Simon down there, who were fully involved with permaculture at that point in time, and also Wayne and Yvonne Parsons from Honeymoon Valley. They were a good inspiration. So there was Rico out from Kirikiri as well. He had some amazing design elements going on there. So I think role models were the key to that one. That got me started. I wanted a piece of land to do good. I was enabled to buy land relatively early and start playing as well. But I needed to formalise what I was doing. Traditionally I'd been working in horticulture, and then I was working with the Davis Collier family, who I fully respect for the knowledge they gave me, and that was working in sawmilling and wood processing. And I wanted to have a change from the chemical environment, because both horticulture and wood processing had a lot of chemicals tied around it. And so I had a break. I sort of dropped out for 9 months. I lived in a 3x3 steel Mitre 10 garden shed. I had a fire bath, and I watched the pigeons fly into the chocha tree in the morning, and I watched them fly away, and I counted them each day, and I think there was 13 or 15 that would come and sit in this one tree. And so it was quite a relaxed period, and that period gave me time to think. And then I went back and I studied at Unitec in Auckland, and my tutor Brendan Horari was there, and we seemed to have a good working relationship, and I learnt a lot of elements that I would have never been able to achieve without being there. So, and there were a cluster of really nice people there to learn from. That course was a sustainable land management course. There were only 8 people studying that course out of the whole of New Zealand at that time, which is really disappointing. And yeah, that was the keystone. So after that, I was able to get employment in property design, because it gave me the formalisation and the ability to write a report a little bit and put my knowledge to paper, which I didn't have before. When we first moved on the land, we had a daughter as a baby, and we needed to build the house really quickly. We knew we wanted to be sustainable, but we were earning quite good money, and that enabled us to make quite good steps with property development to enable our future living. We invested in sustainable design because it was promoting, so we were walking the talk, we were learning about it, we were rabbit farming, we were pig farming, we had lots of things going on. We built a house that was effectively, it utilised wood from the farm. I was lucky enough to have a sawmill and the knowledge to be able to do that. We built pretty much the whole house from wood that was recovered, otherwise would have been burnt. We used local materials where possible, and we used WOFA people, so we were training people all the way through. We started learning about nutrient cycles and all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. We try not to use chemicals on the farm at all.
Yes, of course.
We haven't been working with fertiliser, but we do realise that the farm is missing certain ingredients that we have to try to discover if we wish to maintain grassland livestock, that we need to actually make sure that they can maintain their health. And otherwise we have been traditionally planting 1,000 trees a year. We don't claim carbon credits or anything from that, because carbon credits is just a way to basically take the problem away from those that are creating it. So,
That's right.